Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Uppel. I'm the Deputy Chief of Strategic Services here at Eugene Springfield Fire, and I have the honor to be basically the Master of Ceremonies for our second annual Cardiac Arrest Survivors Dinner. We found last year to be very successful, and we expect nothing less from this evening as well. The purpose of our event is certainly to celebrate you being here. And our system, which for many years, especially since around 2012, we've been aggressively trying to improve our cardiac arrest success rate in the field. And as you'll hear tonight, we continue to move forward in a very positive direction with our statistics and an ever increasing number of survivors that are attending these meetings, still continue to be a part of our community and are enjoying many more years with their families. Schedule for this evening, well, let's get things started off. I'll have Chief Zlutic come up and give some thoughts, and I would expect probably a story or two associated with that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the chain of survival. Last year's theme was the chain of survival, and we discussed how over the years it has continued to develop and evolve, not only with the science, but our capabilities both in and out of the hospital to improve cardiac arrest survivors and improving morbidity and mortality in our system. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll then transfer over to dinner, which is the favorite part for me. And then once we transition off of that, we're going to hear a few of the survivor stories. Along with that, we're also going to have some presentations on where we were, where we're at today, and where we certainly plan on going into the future here at Eugene Springfield Fire, and again, improving our cardiac resuscitation outcome. The end of the evening, we'll end certainly with a video. Last year, very few people walked out of here with a dry eye. I highly recommend locating the nearest napkin. You might need that. With that, a few safety things. The AED is located at the door as you come in. Mounted right there on the wall. The restrooms are also located in the lobby as well. We have our beverage bars back there in the back corner, and we will cycle through in a very orderly fashion, because that's what we do in the fire service, out to the buffet line here very shortly. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the chief of our department, Fire Chief Joe Zlutic.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening. I'd like to start out with recognizing Springfield City Councilor Sherry Moore and her husband Neil are here today. Hi, thank you for coming. Dr. Polson, our medical director, is here, and is also Val Simmons and her team from McKinsey-Willamette Medical Center. Thank you so much for coming today. This truly has become one of my favorite days of the year, and at the end of the night, you're going to see why. I am so impressed with the work that our crews do out in the field every single day. And for the crews that are here today, part of this is for you as well. You do such a good job technically taking care of business out in the field. You are amazing. I want our crews to understand how well their work is appreciated. And this is for you as well, so thank you so much for what you've been doing all year. I will tell you that a person comes to mind that about in 2011, I got to visit with him when he was on light duty, and that's Josh Moore at the table up here. And I came into this crazy meeting. I say it's crazy because he had a couple of cardiologists and some really unconventional processors that were thinking about how they were going to improve cardiac arrest survival. And here's a guy that wasn't assigned that. He kind of just adopted it and took with it and ran with it. And when you think about the good things that have happened in this community because of somebody being on light duty, that's the poster child right there. So thank you, Josh, for all the work that you've done on this. It would be remiss of me not to mention one of our, I would say, sage advisors that worked with us in 2013 and 14. His name was Captain Craig Amon. He was a Seattle Fire Department captain that lived in the west side of Eugene here. And when we said we were going to try to adopt the Seattle strategy and try to get to 50% survival, he was one of the individuals that came to our department and helped our department understand that we could do this, and that our pit crew service of taking care of CPR would make a huge difference in the survival of our members of our community. He since has passed in 2017. But his family, we still have a deep connection to his family, and we're very thankful for him helping us to kind of jumpstart us. And right now, we don't have our data from this year to know how close we are to 50%. We're not satisfied with that, by the way. We're trying to get closer to 60%. But I just want to put it to you this way before I pass it back to Chief Heppel, is 26 people in this community walked out of the hospital fully neurologically intact because of the way that we changed how we deliver this service. And there's no one person that did it. It was the doctors, it was our training, it was every person that drops their knees and starts CPR makes a huge difference. And so, okay, this year was 26. It was 20-some last year, 20-some the year before that, 12 or 15 before that. It's going to be 26 next year. We're going to be in the hundreds here pretty quick. And one day in our careers, it's going to be in 1,000 people, taking them back to their families as a result of people having the vision to adopt what the best practices might be. You've only yet begun to see kind of how the technology impacts the survival of the people that are receiving CPR. I know when I do CPR, my training nurse, Anderson, I asked her to look to see where my compressions were to make sure they were in specifications, and she gives me a thumbs up, or you know. But we know how we're doing on each and every patient, and that's so very important. But the most important thing is tonight, where we get to enjoy survival and seeing people with their families again. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, Rachel O'Calla, my executive assistant, for setting this up. I know how much work this is. If we give Rachel just a quick round of applause, it'll go a long ways with me tomorrow. Thank you, Rachel. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Heppel. Thank you, Chief.
Appreciate it. I'm going to walk away from the podium for just a minute. As I talked earlier about the chain of survival, one of the concepts we teach in EMT school very early on is that while you may perceive yourself as a hero, let's remember it's about a system. It's about a system approach to healthcare. While many times individuals, get lauded for their efforts in their successes in cardiac resuscitation or even trauma or stroke type of incidents, there's actually a system behind the people that's supporting that and makes those things happen. This hasn't just come around instantaneously. The different links within the chain have been developed over different times throughout our history. Early resuscitation attempts were as far back into the 1400s, and then they started to certainly develop in the early 1900s. When we start talking about CPR, it was in February of 1968 that the first 911 call was made in Haleyville, Alabama. Now, exactly how Haleyville, Alabama got the 911 before anybody else is pretty unusual, but that's what they did. Back in those times, simply someone answered the phone. They would then call the fire department and say, there's an incident down the street. Y'all need to hurry on down there. And that's what they did. Today, we have processes in place called emergency medical dispatching protocols, which a 911 call taker who has gone through months and months, literally years of training, answers that call and then can triage that call based on the patient's need, their specific need, down to a particular acuity level, and then make a determination of what resource is best to go out and make that call successful. And we have implemented that system here within Lane County. They also provide pre-hospital instructions, so pre-hospital care. So whether if someone is in cardiac arrest, they provide information over the phone on how to do chest compressions. They provide coaching. They're also there for the folks on the phone. You could imagine the stress that they're in deal with and what they have to manage. It can calm them down and get them focused to actually help the person. And it's not just cardiac arrest. We also deliver babies over the phone as well. So if anybody interested in trying that, let us know. We can help you out. The next part is CPR, immediate high-quality CPR. It's very interesting as we developed emergency medical services systems. We always focused on these very high-speed, low-drag type skills. The intubation, starting intravenous lines, giving fluids, pushing medications, etc. And it was literally around 2005 or 2010 where the American Heart Association said, wait a minute, you know what? If we stop doing all of this stuff and just try and do what the body does naturally, like make air go in and out and make blood go round and round, we're going to have increased success in cardiac resuscitation. And that's exactly what happened. We started to take our focus off of these advanced things and really started to focus down onto the hard, the fast, being consistent, and high quality CPR. And that has truly proven to be beneficial. And you know, it doesn't take a firefighter paramedic to do that. We teach it down to, I've seen 4 and 5-year-olds that are able to do that, and there's certainly plenty of YouTube videos out there when it comes to that part. We struggled in times where it was people were reluctant to do CPR. Fear of, you know, is there maybe a bloodborne pathogen component, or is there a disease process I can catch? And our way to manage that was hands-only CPR, and you'll see flyers around tonight that address that part, because we're just taking advantage of allowing air to go in and out and blood to go round and round. Rapid defibrillation, the first generation of out-of-hospital defibrillation was actually developed in Belfast, Ireland in around 1965. And that was actually the first device. It was about 30 kilograms. It was about 70 kilograms, which is about 31 pounds. So if anybody be interested in lugging that around on calls all day long. And then it was utilized and successful in around 1966. That system continues to develop, and then in 1968 they referred to that as the Belfast Protocol, in that you would send out these advanced cardiac units that would provide out-of-hospital resuscitation and defibrillation to patients. Interestingly enough, it was the United States that really jumped on board with that. Within the UK and Ireland, they really didn't jump onto it. And that it was actually all the way up until the 1990s. In the UK, they still didn't have automated defibrillators or even manual defibrillators on many of their ambulances. So the United States really took off when it came to out-of-hospital defibrillation, and we saw the first generations of our basic and advanced life support systems. The first entity that is actually credited with an advanced life support system was Pittsburgh in 1968, and the team was actually all African American. And that was actually the first credited entity. The paramedic programs, as we know today, came around with the Stafford Act in the early 1970s, and most of that was generated out of the LA area, but there were 5 entities that were credited with the first paramedic programs. One of them was right here in Oregon, and that was Buck Ambulance in Portland, Oregon. So Oregon has always been on the forefront of trying to move advance our technologies in pre-hospital care. And that is still continuing to be represented with our scope of capabilities and practices here in the state of Oregon, and doing so much with little. It's pretty amazing, our systems. And then advanced life support is our next chain, and that's actually getting our patients to the hospital. Once we get our patients to the hospital, then that team takes over, continues the resuscitation effort. Hopefully in the field we have resuscitated the patient, and now this is where, in this day and age, we send them to the catheterization lab, where they go in and they'll do a direct intervention and what we call reperfuse, or open up those arteries in the heart. The technology, when I started in 1999 in EMS, we were dabbling in catheterization systems. I worked in a small system called Atlanta at the time, and so we really weren't there yet. It literally took hours to get patients through the system and up to the catheterization lab. And today we have documented times here in Lane County that's less than 30 minutes from the 911 call to a patient actually being reperfused. And if we use the analogy of time as muscle, that's success. That's absolutely success. And we're seeing some of the same advantages or advances in technology with stroke care as well. So we have a very robust system here in Lane County. I think you're going to see some of that tonight. We are very involved with it. But it all starts with you. And that's our big key, is we're starting to see the early recognition, and what we need is folks to be involved and start those compressions early. The probability of survivability goes up tremendously with early CPR, and we can't do that. We can't be there for everybody, but the community can be there for everybody, and that's what we're hoping. So you also see a little bit of technology. Last year in our data, we noticed that there was actually a decrease in citizen CPR. I think it was about a 12% decrease, and one of our goals was to roll out the PulsePoint, or the PulsePoint app, which we have successfully done out, and Chief Campy is going to talk about this evening. So with that, that's a little bit of history as to the chain of survival and how it's a system, and everybody from the common citizen all the way up to the physicians, like Dr. Polson sitting over here in the corner, do our jobs to improve morbidity and mortality and survivability within our community. So with that, I've now put us right back on time for dinner. And I'll go ahead and I'll let folks transition out for dinner. With that, I'll start with table 2, and then we'll start with table 1, and then over to table 3. So if you guys could please grab your plates, head off to the buffet, and I'll excuse tables as we go through. So as the next part of our presentation, we're going to move forward with one of our survivor stories. This is Joe's survivor story. Joe fully intended on being here this evening. Unfortunately, he wasn't feeling well at the last minute and wasn't able to attend this evening, but he sends his regrets, but his thanks to everyone who is part of his cardiac arrest survival story. So with that.
Yes, I'm Joe Blanchard, Joe W. Blanchard, and I'm a cardiac survivor. I don't remember feeling strange or anything, or any pressure or worried about it, anything. I went in the doctor's office. They were going to check my pacemaker, I guess. Well, I went in there, and I was with my friend, Marine buddy, and I was sitting there, and he said I just keeled over. I didn't remember it. I just went out, and he said they had me on the gurney in there, and there was 3 or 4 guys or more beating on my chest and doing what they have to do, and they had to put the thing down my throat. I don't remember any of it. And they said it was real touchy to bring me back. There's one thing I do remember is, to people talking about that little white light that they see when they die or whatever. I didn't see a little white light. I was in a long hall. I remember it was a long hall, and there was 4 guys holding me down, and I couldn't breathe. And I was screaming at them, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And it was so real. And they wouldn't, I said, let me go, I can't breathe. And just went on and went on and went on until I was screaming at them, fighting them. I was just fighting with them. And then all of a sudden I was out again. But that was, I don't want to go through that again. I hate to go through that again. That was terrible. I woke up in the hospital, on the bed, and I wasn't allowed to get out of the bed or anything. I felt like a prisoner. They said I wasn't going to walk anymore. And they wanted me to go to rehab. And I said, I'll walk. And I said, let me out of this bed. And they let me out of the bed, and I got a hold to one of those walker things. They brought it to me, and I walked. I walked all around that building. I wasn't going to accept that. I don't know. I feel just strange about everything. But I can't dwell on it. If I dwell on it, then it'd drive me crazy. Oh yes, I'm very grateful for what they did. I was gonna, I'm a jokester person. I like to joke around sometimes. I was gonna give them a little trouble and telling them, like, mind your own damn business next time, because I've been through so much since then. But I said, no, I better not do that. But I would like to meet the people that saved my life. Naturally, I'd like to do that. I'd sure like to shake their hand.
At this time, I'd like to introduce firefighter Josh Moore, who's going to talk about the next phases of our program.
Good evening. I'm going to cover just a couple things. First of all, the courage of the survivors to come out tonight so we can celebrate this evening. I just appreciate everybody that's willing to share this deeply personal experience. Then we're going to talk about the importance of bystander CPR, really how that's the foundation of these resuscitations. And then finally, I'm going to cover the changes we made in the XT3 program, which is our cardiac arrest survival program, and then announce the data for 2018, which only a few people know about, so that's going to be exciting. All right. There's a poet that said to share your weakness is to make yourself vulnerable. And to make yourself vulnerable is to show your strength. I personally don't like to think about my mortality. Frankly, it scares me. It makes me feel uneasy because I think death makes us all feel vulnerable. It would be so much easier just to never have to think about it. But thankfully, we can celebrate tonight because all of the survivors are willing to stand up and publicly recognize the story that they went through, so we can share that success story and see the faces and the families of the people that we help. We recognize the strength tonight that must be required to do that. Our survivors here have agreed to shine the light on what it takes, on what it means to survive, on what it means to live, and I just appreciate that. Through their example during this very stressful time, we can think about a term called post-traumatic growth, and when they talk about PTSD, people that develop post-traumatic growth is someone that goes through a horrible experience but actually comes out on the other end stronger. And all the survivors here tonight are one of those incredibly strong people that can go through a traumatic experience and be stronger for it, and I just recognize that tonight. Our survivors are warriors. They have the courage to grow from what must have been terrifying, and tonight we see firsthand that their will to live and the reward of helping others and the love of their family. I think that's great. The dinner tonight brings us all together to show the impact of our purposeful actions. All of us have a small part in this story, but we've all chose life. We choose to live and thrive. We've all had a role, but I really think the survivors, because they're the reason that we can be here and celebrate. Meeting the survivors and all the family members have always been my favorite part of what we do at the Cardiac Arrest Survival Program. So I know we've all kind of been assigned to the same tables, but I just encourage everybody to get up and travel through the tables and shake people's hands. If you don't recognize their faces, and just talk to them about their story, because it's powerful to meet family and of the survivors and the actual survivors themselves. We all need to realize tonight that life is precious, and that it's a gift, and that to know that your actions as you respond, or as you do bystander CPRs, even as you choose to share your survival story, that it has immense meaning, and I thank you for that. Cardiac arrest is still the #1 killer of adults in America. There's so many lives that can be saved from this problem. It can happen for a myriad of reasons. There's multiple types of cardiac arrest. It happens to every age and gender demographic. It can affect any one of us. The risks are great, and the consequences are severe from cardiac arrest. And they require vigilance to overcome this sudden death. But I think there's hope in banding together and working together to conquer this disease. And we have seen tremendous improvement in our local survival from cardiac arrest. Bystander compression CPR, I think, is really the answer to saving more lives from cardiac arrest. Compression CPR keeps the brain tissue alive until first responders can treat the underlying cardiac problem. For every minute that goes by that you don't have blood flowing through your brain, you lose about 10% of your brain function. And so oftentimes first responders can't respond in time to keep that brain tissue alive. So it's dependent on the public to recognize that cardiac arrest, be willing to act and do compression CPR so those people can be saved. Compression CPR is now taught in all our public schools. Governor Kate Brown signed a bill that says by the time you graduate high school in Oregon, you'll have been taught at least compression-only CPR. It's a simple life-saving skill. It no longer requires certification. It is the American Heart Association's recommendation for adult CPR since 2010. And it can be learned in 10 minutes. It has been proven to raise rates of survival across the country. And we are offering it free in Eugene and Springfield. We go out and teach any group that's requesting compression-only CPR a free training session. You just log on to our website at City of Eugene, Act C3, and you can request compression CPR training for your group, and we're happy to provide that. Our cardiac arrest survival program is called Act C3, and we've continued to seek ways to improve that survival locally. Several CPR classes were taught to school-aged children, to community groups, and churches and Boy Scout troops over the year. We also have reviewed every single cardiac arrest case that's happened in our 2 cities and in the outlying rurals, and entered all that data into the CARES registry. And the CARES registry is a national database that helps us QA what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and look at all the data points in a cardiac arrest so we can find ways to improve that survival and check and see how we're doing compared to other agencies. We have also looked at improved medical techniques and some new devices that are out there that we're going to incorporate into our protocols going forward with this next year, because our goal's always been to lead the country in resuscitation. Now, all of us have a part in the next few things I'm going to talk about, and that's our actual survival for 2018. It's really exciting. We have finished reviewing all of the data for 2018, and it's entered in the CARES database. CARES hasn't certified that data yet because other agencies are still adding data, but I can tell you for our area, I can tell you what our survival is. And it is based on the Eustine model. Now, the Eustine model, because there's so many types of cardiac arrest, we've all had to agree on what type of arrest patient are we going to compare. So when we talk about survival, we're talking about a witnessed cardiac arrest that was in a shockable rhythm when we first found them and that got bystander CPR. So talking about that group of survivors, I just want to tell the other survivors in the room that you're not alone. That there are, every month there's more and more people surviving your cardiac arrest. And I think the chief mentioned 24 people this last year got to go home to their families. But what does that mean as far as a percentage of survival? I remember last year at our survivor dinner, chief said, well, I want to push that survival even more and get to 65, or I can't remember what you said. And I remember thinking in my head, I don't even know if that's possible, because the best I've ever heard so far is 51%. And we've matched close to 50% for 3 years. And I kind of thought, well, maybe we'd hit that glass ceiling, but that's not the case. Remember in 2011 when we first started working on this program, our survival was 12%. So for 2018, we've hit an amazing 58.3%, which is amazing. Yeah. No, it's pretty awesome. It's the best survival stat that I've heard of so far that's recognized by a national database. However, if you look at the people that didn't get bystander CPR, that number drops to 53.6%. So a 6% drop, or 5% drop, when public doesn't step in and do CPR. So I think the important message here is that compression CPR absolutely saves lives. In 2011, only 51% of our witnessed arrests got compression-only CPR. But last year, we even saw an improvement there too, and we're at 59.9%. So we're 60% of our witnessed cardiac arrest patients got CPR in the field. But what I can't stop thinking about is, what if that number was 100%? How many more lives could we save from cardiac arrest? So really my message here is congratulations for survivors on being brave enough to stand up and let us celebrate tonight. But also we need to train and tell everybody to learn compression-only CPR, because it absolutely saves lives. Thank you for your time.
I wish everyone could have seen my view of the chief going, what is it, what is it, what is it? It was all we could do upstairs with the staff to not tell Chief Zaludik what it was and let it be announced tonight. So certainly we're all very excited about that. Next, I'd like to introduce our EMS chief for Eugene Springfield Fire, Division Chief Joanna Campy.
Josh, it's hard not to get a little emotional when we hear that, hear that number. It's hard not to have tears come to your eyes, because when I think of the hours of training that our crews have done and the strength that they have brought to this program and to this community, and their response and what they have done in taking what we had as a vision and really putting it into practical application, and they're the ones who are doing the heavy lifting of saving those lives, including you out there. But I think about, Karen Anderson and our training staff and what we have done in the number of hours and the times that we sat around the tables and tried to figure out what we can do to make this work better. It really is hard not to get emotional to think about that. And when you think of lives that are saved, as to what that means for families and communities, and it's hard not to have that be a personal story for all of us. Last year we were at a 50% on our survival rate, and that was pretty exciting, and we were really happy with that. And the big thing that we noticed last year was we had a 12% decrease in bystander CPR, and so we really wrapped our heads around what could we do for bystander CPR, and what could we do in our community for that. And Mackenzie Willamette, Peace Health, Sacred Heart Riverbend Hospital, and the Region 5 Training Association all pooled money together to bring the PulsePoint application to our community, which went live on October 31st. And the PulsePoint application is a software program that runs on your phone, a simple smartphone, and it alerts you to if there is a cardiac arrest close by where you're at in a public place. This application, from the time that we implemented on October 31st until now, we have 2,028 followers in the local community. And in the month of January, we had 9 people who received alerts to their phones for a public occurring cardiac arrest. Chief Zaludik, I think you might have been one of those responders to one of those cases. It's through bystander CPR that we're going to make a big difference. And I don't know what the ceiling is now. I'm starting to feel, I really felt like we had some setbacks maybe this last year with our cardiac arrest survival, just in the mere fact that our cardiac monitors had aged so much and had become we were really worried about them for a while, of whether or not we would be able to get data out of them and studying the data, and we had to stop studying the data and stop looking at every single cardiac arrest case because the software was so old that it wouldn't be compatible with our current computers any longer. And so we were really worried about that. And so to have these numbers, it's just absolutely wonderful. But this bystander CPR app is called PulsePoint, and we are so fortunate to have that be purchased in our community by our hospital partners and the Region 5 Training Association. This is an app that anybody can have on their phone, and it will also tell you, it will also give you instructions. If you don't know how to do CPR, it will give you instructions in the moment of if you need to actually do that. It will also tell you where the closest AED is located to your cardiac arrest event, and it is available just by the App Store, so everybody can have that. There are some little flyers on the table if you're interested in taking one home with you to do more research on that project. We were also very fortunate to be awarded a federal grant from the Assistance to Firefighter program for $1.2 million to replace our cardiac monitors in September. And we ordered those up and got those here, and we just put them in service actually just a few weeks ago. And we're really excited about the quality of data that we'll be able to look at from those cardiac monitors to be able to look at how, continue to look at how we can change things to make a difference into the future. We do quality improvement ad nauseum. Karen, the hours that she puts in reviewing each one of these cases and looking at is there a pattern, or is there a pattern in what we've done that triggered spontaneous circulation for certain patients. And we research and data, and we've put together a cardiocerebral resuscitation committee that is continuing to do research and is continuing to look at best practices across the country of all of the different things that are available, and looking at what other agencies' cardiac arrest registry data looks like in order to find what are their best practices, all of those different things. And we're watching what those other agencies are doing carefully to see what we can do here to change our practice, to raise our numbers even higher. But we couldn't do it without our crews, we couldn't do it without our community, we couldn't do it without the support, and we couldn't do it without that whole chain of survival. We couldn't do it without all of those pieces being in place. Our crews are the best. They work hard, they train, and they train. They give their best performance when it matters the most. And for our survivors here today, it's just an honor to get to be here with you. This wouldn't have been possible without you. Thank you. I think we're at our next story. We're at our next story?
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm still stuck on the whole 58% thing. So, so it's a very exciting time. We're going to move on to our next survivor story, and this is Greg's story, and he is here with us this evening, and we thank him for providing this story to us. And let's listen in.
So I'm Greg Bowden. I am a survivor of cardiac arrest.
I am Brandon Maynard, and I am a co-worker of Greg Bowden's.
So yes, I was at my desk, working, doing my normal thing. One of the production managers was in there, Josh Rhodes, and he said that he thought I fell asleep and started kicking my chair. And what was going on was, as I was, death breaths. I was just sitting there kind of gargling. People kind of started panicking a little bit.
One of our co-workers was freaking out. I couldn't get her to say anything. She wasn't saying anything just from where she came. So we walked back, and I looked in, and Greg was tipped back in his chair, just out cold. So we got him down and yelled to go grab the AED, and Shirley went and grabbed it out of the shop. We ripped his shirt off and basically just did what we needed to do. Get the pads on him and let it, they work its system. It tells you exactly what to do. And we did that. Then it says start compression. So we got on top and just started the compressions. And part of it that makes it a little more intense is I've known Greg a long time. We played ball together, so it took it a lot more personal at that point. Like, just straight focus. This is a longtime friend. I was doing my job for one, but at the same time, it was someone personal to me, so it made it a little more intense. And when the machine stopped and then it says, let it breathe, then he was going through the death breaths again. David jumped in, he did his compressions, cracked his ribs, spitting out the blood. People were worried about that, and it's one of those things, you're not worrying about that at that point in time. You're focused on him and what we needed to do.
The first time I saw Brandon, who did CPR on me, I basically told him I was pissed at him because he crushed my chest so bad. Well, I remember waking up in the hospital 3 days later. I was in a coma, and I just had stuff in my neck, my arms. I was bruised, badly because I was having convulsions and fighting. The paramedics they had to wrestle me. So, and really that's it. I woke up, but I knew where I was. I knew what happened. I was prepared for it. The doctors had told me that if I didn't, do something about this, that I wouldn't see 50. The ironic thing is the next week, the next Friday, I was supposed to have a pacemaker put in because they knew I had a condition. They knew I had a problem. I just didn't act fast enough on it. You just think you're not going to be the one. So that's basically kind of where I was at the time. I was like, it's not going to happen. And lo and behold, it happened. So everybody told me I should have played the lottery because it's real. If these people wouldn't have been there, nothing. And the other thing I couldn't imagine is, sorry. I was at home with my son, and if it would have happened there, he couldn't have done anything. He's not big enough, he's not strong enough to do CPR. He wouldn't know what to do. I think what people don't understand is what happened to me, but it affects so many people around you. You don't realize the panic that everybody around there is seeing. And, when you sit back and you kind of relive all that and you hear what happened and then you kind of look around you and go, man, that wasn't just traumatic for me. It was traumatic for everybody in the room. It really was. I think the biggest thing is the trauma. I have, PTSD. I have nightmares. I have trouble sleeping. There's just a lot of weird side effects. So it took a while to get past it. The things I did hear of one of the first responders was Brandon. You know, they told me he locked himself in a room for like 2 hours. Yep. Decompress.
I did after it was all said and done and Greg was wheeled out. I went and locked myself in a conference room for quite some time. The adrenaline wore off. I was in tears. I didn't know how he was doing. Probably for the first month and a half, I walked by his office every day. And the first couple weeks sucked because obviously he wasn't in there. Well, you know, he's just trying to recover after he found out what had happened. But and I make it a point now every day. I walk by probably every office just to walk through, make sure everybody's doing well.
Well, of course, there's appreciation, but I will be honest. When you guys had your other thing about 2 weeks ago, I couldn't walk in the door. You know, I got nervous. I didn't want to relive it, and I still don't want to. You know, but if it helps other people or lets other people understand the importance, I mean, you know, now Lands does CPR all the time. You know, we've changed our outlook of, you know, how things are. And even when I walked away, my brother's work, you know, they went and got the AEDs. But lots of other people went out there and, you know, saw what happened and they've taken steps.
I would just tell them thank you for who they are and what they've chosen for their careers and what they do in their daily lives, because had none of them been there, no one being there, we wouldn't have Greg today, honestly. I mean, everything worked perfectly, and if we had to do it all over again, we'd all do it all over again. I know that for a fact.
If there wasn't people around, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you the story right now.
It happened for a reason, like you said. Had he been driving, had we not have been there, I mean, everything just fell just perfectly, and we're just doing our job. It wasn't that it was a gratitude thing or looking for anything. If it happened again, we'd do it again. But I mean, I thank God every day that it happened where it did, when it did.
The stars were aligned that day, no doubt about it.
Greg, thank you for sharing your story. Appreciate that. Well, certainly the stars are aligning for more and more people as we continue to improve our out-of-hospital resuscitation rates. And I certainly, as one of the leadership team members, look forward to next year and the possibility of breaking through that 60%. I'm sure Josh is, who takes tactical lead on this program and encourages us to do that. Some parting words, start with, you know, certainly thank you for the survivors for having the courage to be here tonight. That's amazing, and for sharing your story, and it's good for us to hear the story as well. Thanks to those who take the call at the 911 center, who dispatch the call. Thanks to those who have the courage to do CPR, the hands-only CPR, and to simply get involved and making a difference in someone's life. Thanks to our crews who respond religiously every day to every call that they're asked to respond to, and the success that we hope that you enjoy for the hard work that you've put into this program. And thanks to the hospital staff who take these patients and spend so much time with them and do amazing things with technology and modern medicine, so all of our community members can walk out of the hospital with little or no neurodeficits and enjoy, hopefully, decades with their families. With that, thank you for attending, and please drive home safely. Thank you.